ever heard someone say, who the hell does she think she is?
I think the first memory of that I have is I was like 5 or 6. Just being too many things, too much, people questioning the space that I've taken up. It's kind of a song B-roll in the background of my head for most of my life. How about you?
I used to get offended by that term, but I actually think of it more like a compliment, because I think that phrase has really been used against confident Black women who dared to show up in their full authority, to speak with confidence, and to just simply take up space authentically.
Welcome to our very first episode of Smart Wellness. My name is Summer Esquerre, and I am an ICF certified coach and former corporate executive.
And I'm Dr. Reba Peoples, board certified psychiatrist, functional medicine practitioner, and emotional wellness strategist.
So why are we here? This space is for us, those who are gifted, who are Black, who are high achieving, who have done all the right things, but still feel things are not quite right. And in this episode, we're talking about code switching, taking up space, and being too much.
Now, as a disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only. We are not here to provide medical advice. And if you do need further assistance, it is important that you work with your mental health professional or physician.
And for each episode, we reach you where you're at. There's no judgment. There's no concern. Really, what we're trying to do is create a space where we all can discuss things that have been in the cipher and have been in the ether that we really haven't had a place to discuss. So let's talk about taking up space and code switching. Have you ever been in a situation, Dr. Reba, where you had to pretend to be or adjust who you were to be accepted?
Oh, all the time. I think about times where I have felt a need to modulate my tone of voice to make other people feel comfortable, or even, wearing my hair natural was something that I really struggled with when I first started working. So it is amazing how far I have come in terms of self-acceptance, but it is definitely something that has been a struggle.
And I would say the same thing. I know that there was one time, and I come from the corporate America space, and I remember an executive telling me, well, Summer, you're doing well, but if you want to get an A+++, you need to smile, you need to do all these different things. And what was so distracting and hard for me is there's no such thing as an A+++. So I was being put to a certain level and expectation that the rest of my colleagues were not supposed to match, right? So not only did I have to be exceptional, but I had to be beyond reproach and smile while I'm doing it. So one of the questions that I have for you, Dr. Reba, is what is the physiological, what is the cost of that? What happens to us in our bodies when that is happening and we're code switching and contorting?
So, I think it's important to think about the purpose behind the code switching. So sometimes we can code switch from a place of power, and then we can also code switch from a place of survival. So a lot of times in societies where there are unequal power balances, usually the onus is on the person with less authority to shift how they show up in order to fit in with the more dominant culture. So when we do think of that as something that is necessary in order to survive, that actually puts us into that sort of fight or flight mode. So when we do think about survival, you can respond in one of 4 ways when you're feeling that you're in danger. So we've heard of fight, we've heard of flight, but there are actually 2 other ways that we can respond. So one is to freeze, and the other is to appease. So appeasing is essentially making yourself small. So if you've ever seen, an animal that's been abused, how it, physically makes its body smaller, it's pretty much signaling to the other animal, I'm smaller than you, I'm not a threat, don't hurt me. And what that looks like interpersonally is making yourself small in relationships. So really sacrificing your own needs, sacrificing your own comfort, just to make sure that the other person is comfortable and taken care of. So what that looks like in real life is, making yourself small in how you show up. So modulating your tone of voice, um, you know, making sure you don't say things to, set the other person off, essentially walking on eggshells. And what that does is it sort of activates this chronic stress response internally. So we have these stress hormones that are coursing through our bodies, and there's really no way for that stress to be discharged. So long term, that is a setup for, chronic health conditions. So things like high blood pressure and diabetes and other longer term health issues when we are in that sort of constant state of stress.
So it's not because we're Black,
Mhm.
and because we're Black, we succumb to heart disease, high blood pressure, the sugars. It's not because we're inferior or that there's something in us that's lesser than the dominant culture. What I'm hearing from you is that because of the contorting, because of the things that we're doing, it is eliciting this constant stress response in our body that's putting really like harmful chemicals in our body on a constant basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that wears our body down.
Oh, for sure. And I think about David R. Williams. So he is a Harvard researcher, and he coined a tool called the Everyday Racism Scale, and it pretty much measures microaggressions. So kind of all those day-to-day stressors that Black people, deal with on a day-to-day basis. And people who did score higher on that Everyday Racism Scale typically did have higher rates of chronic illnesses like, high blood pressure, diabetes, et cetera. And so things like, having to shift, having to contort, overall can impact our well-being.
So I want to talk about this somatically. And when I say somatically, I'm talking about being in the body and feeling the body. So we're talking about these different types of issues that we can go to the doctor and they say that we have. I just also want to talk about like the everyday, what I have felt somatically in my body doing this contorting.
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure my jaw has been tight. I have had stress headaches, right? Like I have even squeezed my butt, right? So squeezing the BT because I'm trying to contort and make sure that I contain everything. And even after time, that starts to draw on you, creating fatigue. I have felt tired or like the end of a work day. Like why, as somebody who is in front of a computer in meetings all day, why am I feeling like I have just gone into battle? Mm-hmm. And what it also reminds me of is, what's in our bodies from our ancestors that were enslaved. What we were utility, right? We had to offer something in order for our survival. So I'm just thinking about all the different ways that just comes up and manifests in us, and we don't even realize that we're holding all of that in our bodies. What we're trying to do is be thoughtful of saying the right thing, saying it the right way, using the right words, the right tone, the right measurement of our voice, the right smile, right? All of these different things to be accepted in these spaces to really keep us safe, right? Mm-hmm. The thought is, I need to be safe. And really, it's not a direct thought. I need to be safe. And so in this meeting, so that I don't have to fight, flight, freeze, I'm going to do this different contorting in order to make it through this 45-minute meeting. So there are some other things that we want to get into related to this. What are some of the smart ways that we can attend to this experience that we have? Because the environment's not going to change, mm-hmm. right? But we owe it to ourselves to fight for ourselves so that things can improve for us, for our bodies, for our families, for our communities. Mm-hmm. So is there a smart way to handle this? And if so, what is one of the things that you should suggest?
Mm-hmm. So when we think about the SMART wellness framework, the R in the framework is recognition of identity. So really knowing who you are. outside of the work that you do, the role that you play in the world. So really recognizing that your existence is your permission for, joy, peace, happiness, etc. So when we are thinking,
But wait, let's say what do we say that one more time? What do we have the right to?
so your existence is your permission for joy, peace, and happiness.
That's a lot.
Mhm.
I don't know if we take the time to think about not only do we have permission, but it is our right as human persons on this planet to have, you said, joy,
Mhm.
peace,
Mhm.
and happiness.
Mhm.
So how do we get to that as you were talking about it?
Well, I think a big piece is really knowing who you are. So, really recognizing who you are at your core rather than who the world tells you that you're supposed to be. And you're right, as Black people, we have been historically defined by our capacity to produce labor. So, a lot of times we do tie our sense of value to things that are outside of ourselves. The danger in that is, anytime that external role gets threatened, then your entire sense of self can crumble. Um, so really being able to hold tightly to that sense of who you are is important. And when you are in these situations where you're being asked to show up in ways that are other than who you authentically are, it's important to ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish in this situation with this behavior?
So how do we do that, right? We're talking to gifted and exceptional Black folks who have been doing this decade after decade. This is what they know. So this is what they have practiced, which means this is what they have embodied.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone who is in that space that the who do you think you are, you minimize that, right? And who you think you are is to contort.
Mm-hmm.
How do we even start to break that down, unravel that so that folks can start to recognize and remember who they are?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think first of all, asking yourself that question, am I operating from a place of survival or am I operating from a place of power? And just making that small mindset shift can really shift how you show up in certain situations. So I was actually an anthropology major in college. So we would have ethnographic field studies. And I tend to think about my time in corporate spaces as an ethnographic field study. So you are learning the cultural rituals of the corporate office dweller. So if I am navigating within that space, what are some ways that I can show up in that space so that I understand how they move? So just having that sort of small shift does give my power back. Whereas when you are operating from a place of fear, that is when you are really, triggering those stress hormones and are more likely to have some of those longer term stress-related issues when you are moving through these spaces.
So how do we practice this even before we're in the space, right? Because once you're in the space, you're ready, set, go. Your body is in work mode. Your body is in, community spaces where you're having to show up and be exceptional. Are there ways that we can take the time before we're in those environments to practice that recognition and even to understand what that looks like? Are there questions that we can ask ourselves in that recognition piece?
I mean, so sure. One big question to ask is, why am I here? So what is the thing that I am really wanting to accomplish? I think another question to ask is, how do I feel in my body? So there are certain situations, certain instances where you feel more open, more expansive, and then there are other times where you do feel closed and tight. So if you are feeling more closed and tight in your body, then understanding that that's a signal that this space or the person, the situation may not be one that is, fully fostering safety. Another question to ask is, how do I feel about myself in this situation? So there are times when you may feel confident, you might feel at ease. And then there are other times where you might feel incompetent or inept or feel tense. So those are all signals that are being communicated to you that the situation that you're navigating may or may not be healthy for you or may not be in your best interest. So sometimes we do navigate spaces that aren't ideal for us. And it's important to recognize when it is time to really move on, to use that opportunity short term to get to where you ultimately want to go. But there's that phrase that you have to be willing to leave the table when love is no longer being served.
Woo! So I actually have another exercise for you all that is could be seen as a little awkward and a little uncomfortable, but you could do it by yourself. No one has to be around. And I've actually got this from a somatic coach and therapist, Prentice Hemphill. So this is not mine. I want to make sure that there's proper attribution. And this goes back to what you just said about if you're not getting love at that table. I think one of the fundamental ways to get to learn and know yourself is to pick a love song and sing that love song to yourself for 7 days straight. And when you pick this love song, it's not a song that you would sing to someone else, but it is a song that you would sing to yourself. So what you would do is you would get in front of a mirror once you selected that song. You would play it, you would have it in your earphones or speakers, and you would sing it to yourself and notice what it brings up. Notice the sensations that you feel, notice the feelings that it might provoke or evoke, and not in a judgment, but just to notice. Because one of the things that I think that you're talking about is that we don't notice ourselves anymore. We're so busy trying to externalize and scan and be vigilant about the external and the environment, which is to our safety and makes a lot of sense. We forget to pay attention to who we are. Mm-hmm. So this is a fun exercise. It's one that you can do in private. No one has to know. And just really notice what happens when you sing that song to yourself. I know I've done it several times. I've done several iterations of it. One of the songs that I love is Anita Baker's Angel. So I'm dating myself, right? But one of the things that I noticed, the first 13 times I sung that song to myself, I didn't believe it, right? Like, I didn't believe that I'm my own angel. And there were times when I was singing the song that I was crying, like I felt a lot of energy, and it allowed me to start to be in relationship with myself to answer that question, who in the hell do I think I am, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a great exercise for you all to try out. We welcome you doing it. And we also want to hear from you of if you did it, what happened? Did you say, oh, this was complete nonsense? Or did you have a big emotion, big sensation? Or was there dullness? You didn't notice anything? We would love for you to let us know. Please put it in the comment section. And also contact us at smartwellnessglobal.com. So Dr. Reba, is there anything else that you wanted to share or discuss as we're discussing who in the hell do we think we are?
So, a lot of times people think about healing as, reinventing a new version of themselves, when really healing is about getting back in touch with the version of yourself that you already are before the world asked you to forget.
Thank you, Dr. Reba, for that. Welcome again to our first episode. We hope that you stay around and listen and join us and interact and engage with us. Things that made sense, didn't, you agreed with, have question about, we all want to hear it. And if you are ready to go on the smart wellness path, please reach out to us at smartwellnessglobal.com to find out more about us, about this liberatory path, and how we are trying to make sure that healing is not a hustle when wellness is a strategy, particularly for gifted and high achieving Black people. So we'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.